All the drawings so far have had dimensions. Dimensions are the sizes of everything that you've drawn, and if you were to build them in the shop, they'd be the sizes that you would use to manufacture that part. Today we're going to learn the last lesson in Designtech drafting, how to do dimensions, how to draw them on there yourself. So believe it or not, there are actually specific rules that we follow for dimensioning. And they are the ANSI 14.5M 1988 rules. It's a group and they decided the rules that everyone should follow. If you're drafting and dimensioning in New England, you should be able to produce a set of drawings that read similarly to someone doing it in California, or Canada, or China. I'm not sure if China follows the same rules, but these are the rules that we are going to follow. So in short, we're going to add the dimensions to the drawing. There are some basic rules. Take time to plan out the location of the dimensions. You should do that. Dimensions are not placed inside the drawings, only around them. So here we're going to put all the dimensions on the outside of this piece, not on the inside of the piece. Larger dimensions are placed outside of smaller dimensions. We'll talk about that. Each dimension should be stated clearly, so it can only be interpreted in one way. That's also very important. The same dimension is not repeated on multi-view drawings. If you've already said the length, you don't need to say the length anywhere else. Dimensions are given from center lines where necessary. We're going to talk about that. And there are rules about the dimension lines, extension lines, circles, and arcs. We'll get into all of this. But when you are showing the dimensions of a part, the first things you need are the length, width, and height. So, what's the length of this object? Well, I want to draw the length underneath this right here. And now the first thing that we need to do is draw extension lines. Remember we learned about extension and dimension lines and they go hand in hand? Well, I want to extend off of my part. Now these extension lines, you can read about this in the back. They're started about a 1/16 of an inch from the object and extend beyond the last dimension line about 1/8 of an inch. Whoa, what does that mean? I'll show you. I want to start this line about a 1/16 of an inch away from the part. I don't want it to be touching the part. Then I'm just going to draw a bit, about 1/2 of an inch. And you should draw these light so then you can go back and erase them. So in between these two extension lines, I'm going to put my first dimension. Now, read in the dimension line part. The first dimension line is spaced a minimum of 3/8 of an inch from the view. So that means, when I come up here, I measure 1, 2, 3/8 of an inch, make a little mark, and that's where I'm going to put my dimension line. I'm going to draw it out. I'm going to leave a little blank space in the middle. I also want to extend my extension line. You said the extension line extends about 1/8 of an inch past the last dimension line. It's going to come down like that. Now, what's the dimension that I'm going to put in there? I measure it. It's 3 inches. The next thing should be arrows. We'll do this one entirely and then we'll move around a little bit. When you draw an arrow, you want to start at the termination point against the extension line and then draw it out. Kind of follow along the dimension line and then loop up and loop down. This is so no matter what, if this gets copied, it's clearly an arrow. So that's it. That's my first dimension. it's spaced a 1/16 of an inch. The extension lines come out. This dimension line is 3/8 of an inch away from the original part. And then it extends a little bit past about 1/8 of an inch. So now I have my length. Next, we want some height, right? I want to show the total height, and I'm going to show it in the right-hand view because I can see that height there. But also at some point, I'm going to need to show the height rather of just this part. So we're going to start with that. Start with an extension line. And now I can measure out 3/8 of an inch. 1, 2, 3. My point. Extend that extension line. Good. And now I'll measure that and put that dimension in a second. But now I need to add a second dimension past it. And this is where that first rule in the dimension line section comes in. First dimension line is spaced a minimum of 3/8. Good. And 1/4 for additional dimensions. So now we've measured out 3/8 for the first one, but from the first to the second dimension line will be 1/4 of an inch. Now this dimension line is going to be the total height. We'll leave that 1/16 of an inch. Perfect. So that total height, I measure it. One and 5/8, and this one is 1 and 1/8. Now I have total length, I have total height, and I have height of this first step there. Now we can start to see how some dimensions aren't necessary. If I have the total height and I have the height from here to here, I don't need the height of this little block. So I don't need to worry about that in the future. I have one dimension in the front, 2 dimensions in the right. The top view, I think, is where we should focus now. I'm going to move around a little bit. This circle and this arc are going to need dimensions. And to dimension both of them, I'm going to need center lines. My first task before I dimension them is to add some center lines. I'm going to add that line going there, line going through. I'm not going to put the actual center point yet. Now I will. There we go. That's a little bit off. And what I'm going to do is extend this center line up through the top. So now it sticks out a little bit. Some information I need to know about this circle and this arc. I need to know the diameter of the circle. Circles are measured in diameter. I need to know the radius of the arc. Arcs are measured in radius. I also need to know where to find that center point. So what I can do is measure from this edge to this center line and this edge to this center line. And that'll give me all that information. I'll start with the distance from here to there. I'll draw a dimension, so leave a 1/16 of an inch gap for that extension line. 1/8, 2/8, 3/8 of an inch. Now this is a center line, this is not an extension line, so this will cross over the edge of that drawing. Perfect. Now I have all that. I haven't had any arrows yet. I can go back and do the arrows later. That's 1 inch. And that's 1 inch. Awesome. The next dimensions that I need are the radius of this arc and the diameter of that circle. What we're going to draw, and you can see this if you look on here in the name, it's called a leader line. A leader line points in at a circle and out at an arc. What does that mean? Well, let's start with the arc. So to show the dimension of this arc, I'm going to show it a radius, and I'm first going to draw a leader line. That leader line comes off at any angle, but I'm going to choose a 30. I'm going to put my pencil on the center point and then draw a line out through the arc. At the end of that line, whoa, just marked my paper. At the end of that line, I'm going to draw a little horizontal line to lead into my dimension. I'll add the number first, so I can look at it. The radius is 1 inch. So on here, I'm going to write R 1 inch. Now, this is where the arrows come in. And again, I've shown you how to do arrows in the length, and I'll add arrows the same way on the heights and on this dimension as well. But for an arc and a circle, the arrows go in a specific place. For an arc dimension, measured in radius, the arrow points out at the arc. So it comes from here, and it is positioned right there. So it points out at the arc with a radius of 1 inch. Next, I need to draw the dimension for the circle. And like I said, this leader line, you need a leader line for both, can be at any angle. I chose 30 degrees here, but as long as it goes directly through that center point, it can really be at any angle. So that's the leader line for my circle. Little horizontal line. And now I drew all the way to that point. But what I'm going to do is erase the part that's inside the circle. With the arc, the radius points out to the arc. With a circle, since it's measured in diameter, we point in at the circle. So here this leader line goes to the center point, but you don't have to draw it. You just have to go right to the edge of the circle. And then that is a diameter. There's a diameter symbol symbol on a lot of drawings. You've seen it. It's the circle with the line through it. Diameter symbol, 1 inch. And that's how we show diameter of a circle, radius of an arc. Okay, let's get back to some simple linear dimensions. I need to show the distance from this line to this line. But there are already a lot of dimensions in that top view. There's only one dimension in the front view, so I'm going to dimension it there. I'm going to show the distance from here to there. Going to go up a 1/16 of an inch, make my line. And now here, I need my dimension to be 3/8 of an inch away from the block. But, well, if I were to do that from here, it would just run right into that. So I'm going to measure 3/8 of an inch from here, and then extend all the way down. Now what's that dimension? That dimension is 2 inches. Next, looking at the top view, I would need to know how far it is from here to there. But again, that's crowded. Dimension from here to there would tell me the same thing. It's going to be set up the same way as this. I think I'll do that. And that distance is 5/8. And again, I'm going to go back and put all of those arrows in a minute. So I have my total length, I have my total height, I have the length of this section, I have the length of that section. I don't need the length from here to there because I can subtract 2 from 3, get that. I don't need the height of this section because I can subtract, well, 1 1/8 from 1 5/8 and figure out that's 1/2 of an inch. I don't have the total width. Can I figure out the total width anywhere else? Well, yes, I can. I can go from here to there, and then the radius is another inch. So I know that the total width is 2 inches. But now you have to think about being the fabricator for this part. If you were in the shop, and some of you have taken some shop classes, and some of you haven't, and hopefully all of you get to, it would be a lot easier if just somewhere on here it was written that the whole width was 2 inches wide. Yes, you could figure that out, but just 2 inches so you know the total width, the total height, and the total length right off the bat. So what I'm going to do is add the width. I could add it to the right view, or I could add it to the top view. I'm just going to put it in the right view, since all of the dimensions in the top view are focused around those circles and arcs. Just to keep it nice and easy to read, I'm going to draw it in the right side view. Here's the trick. I could measure out 3/8 of an inch, but these lines are in the same spot, which means these dimensions will be in the same spot. So I know that this is 2 inches, and that's everything. All I need to do now is go back and add those arrows. Remember, those arrows are going to be on the dimension lines and they will point to the extension lines. Those arrows shouldn't be too long. They should really only be about 1/8 of an inch long. All right, now I'm just going to go over it. All of my dimension lines are at least 3/8 of an inch away from the block. All of my extension lines do not touch the block. There's about a 1/16 of an inch gap everywhere. Any secondary dimensions, like this one here, this is the only one that I have, is 1/4 of an inch away from the original one. Radius for arcs measured with a leader line pointing out to the radius. Diameter for circles measured pointing in with a leader line to the diameter. All of my center lines are marked so I can find the center of the hole and I know the diameter of the hole. None of the views are too crowded with dimensions. I could dimension all of this except for height in the top view, but that would just be, it'd be a lot. It would be hard to read. You want to make this easy to read. None of the information is overdone. No dimensions are repeated except for the total width, but that's just because it's a bit easier to read 2 inches compared to adding 1 inch here, adding that 1 inch radius. Just to make it quick, the total width, the total height, and the total length are all there on display. So this is how you add dimensions to multi-view orthographic drawings. Now what you're going to do is add these style dimensions to some drawings of your choice. Make sure that you check the assignment. I'll explain how to do that in the Google Meet. Let me know if you have any questions.